All right. So here is my final message on the whole no contact story. So, like I said, it was beginning of June 2014 that I went no contact with my mom, and she wasn't aware. I didn't tell her, because it wouldn't have made a difference if I knew I had to, but I knew I had months. I had a few months probably to go no contact and really be prepared and be ready, because as I've said, going no contact with a borderline, um, you need to prepare for the claws to come out. Because again, the number one thing that they are afraid of is abandonment. So my doing that meant that there was a good chance I was going to bring out, that she was going to get triggered to be borderline, maybe even in a way that I hadn't even seen before, and she was. So anyway, so June, I go no contact, and I actually tell my dad, because my dad and I had enough of a relationship, and so I called him. I actually went to therapy, talked to my therapist about it, said this is what I'm gonna do, and and he as always has been so supportive, and he and I had been working together at that point for 4 years. Yeah, like 4 years. And so he knew, and he was just like, you got to do what you got to do, and so I walked out of his office, sat in my car, called my dad and said, Dad, it's done between Mom and I. It really is. I can't do this anymore. And, and so I think very true to the whole grief cycle, that they started the grief cycle at that point. And so, of course, the first part of grief is denial. So he was definitely in denial, at that point, and said, "Oh, we'll work it out. I'm sure we can talk through it," And he's like, "You're both such forgiving, kind women. Like, I'm sure we can figure this out," And so at that point, then I had. Yeah, I don't think I'd blocked her yet from communication, from phone or email, but I was on my way for sure. But I knew that as she would, that I decided that I would construct the boundaries of communication based off of how far she would go to try to get me back, or how far she would try to go to try to get me, and stuff like that. So anyway. So denial's first stage, so they were in denial that I was serious about it. Then came October. October was when, one of my youngest brother, who I absolutely love and adore, got sick. And he's very young. He's in junior high. And, so during that time was when the first time that my mother tried to reach out to me, and I ignored her. I ignored her calls, I ignored her emails, ignored her texts, and she just got more and more rageful at me during that time, And finally, my dad kind of intervened a little and said, and called, and I talked to him and asked him, like, what's going on? Could you tell me? And stuff like that. And so then I finally did text her back and said, I want to talk to him. I don't want to talk to you. And she said, I promise I'll let you talk to him, and, I'll just hand the phone right over to him. And I said, okay, then I will. So I did. I called, and the first thing she did was she picked up the phone and said, can I just ask you one question? And I said, sure, which of course I shouldn't have done. And she said, well, why is this relationship not working? And it was an awful, and, hang-ups occurred and stuff. And so therefore I knew, and then I got more text messages. And so therefore I knew I had to cut off her mobile, no texting her from mobile, no phone calls to her from her mobile, at that point. So I definitely severed there. Then I also had to go into my email and make sure that I cut her off there. And then and then I also hid my profile on Facebook from her. So then she went as far as finding my business page on Facebook and then started writing me long messages that way. And so I actually had to report her to Facebook for harassment. And that was that, you know, for that moment anyway. So yeah, so then October came and went, and it was really hard because I didn't know what was going on with my brother. I couldn't get a whole story because my dad, at this point, it was definitely awkward between us because now we've moved from denial through bargaining, because that's the whole bargaining. Well, if I just get her, then, you know, we can solve this whole problem. And I didn't go for that. So now we were in the anger phase they were in the anger phase of the whole grief cycle. And so at that point, then my dad wasn't really talking to me, you know, and so I couldn't get the whole story about my brother. And I had to learn, God, I cannot tell you how hard this has been, but I had to learn to accept that. And I had to learn that I wasn't going to hear what was going to be happening with my family as much anymore. I have a sister who is actually mentally handicapped and is younger, and so she still lives with my family, or with my parents. And so I tried to stay in touch with her during that time by calling actually her day center. She has an adult day center. I'm trying to stay in touch with her that way. But she told me, and she doesn't have a mean bone in her body at all, you know, but she just said, like, can you call the house and not call me here? And I said, no. I said, I can't call the house, but you can always ask Dad to have me call you, and we can do that way, you know. And anyway, but even for her, she could tell because things were not good between my mom and I, and she's so sweet. Like, she doesn't ask to talk to me ever. So anyway, so I had to know, but I expected that would happen. I expected that I could lose my entire family by cutting off my mom, because of the way the dynamics are in my family. I really am like the only one who's really free from her. And so everyone else, it's very much you're either on team mom or team April, and so they had to go with Team Mom. And I get it. They have to survive, you know, and they're surviving with her, and that's their journey, and this is mine, you know. So anyway, so holidays came, which was hard. My first holidays away from them was definitely challenging. Luckily at the time, I was dating a guy, so that was helpful. But also, too, I, you know, at this point had some good friends. And so, you know, Christmas Day, I had a family to go hang out with, which was nice, and, you know, things like that. But I also do have to say that it was probably the best Christmas I've had in a long time because, at least in a while, because I was able to just enjoy my sanctuary, I guess you would say, my being able to be quiet and to myself and stuff like that. So anyway, so that was Christmas. Then and then everything was pretty quiet. I didn't hear from them at all, except for then my birthday was in February, and so then that's when I started to get the text messages. So what was happening was, my dad and I still had communication. So, I would still answer his calls if he would occasionally call me. And at this point, he hardly ever called me. But then, Mom, started using his phone to try to leave me voice messages. And so I had to finally try to get a hold of me. So I finally had to tell my dad, like, look, if she tries, I said, now, you know, any call you make, it's just going to go straight to voicemail, and then I will see if it is you, and then if it is you, then I will call back. Anyway, and then when that happened, then what she would do is she would just pick up his phone and text me. And so just this last few months, I finally decided to just block the texting altogether. And, you know, and in all of this, the messages, and this is why I'm all the more convinced I made the right decision. The messages have only gotten meaner or the same. They've never gotten better. You know, she has said, you know, like, I want to, I want to understand better, like, why you're doing what you're doing. But she might say those words, but the tone and everything she says before and everything she says afterwards is the exact same. Nothing has changed. She's just making very feeble attempts at trying to get back together with me and try to get connected again. She doesn't genuinely mean that she has changed to the point where she could actually hear me or have a conversation with me. So I've learned to, you know, either, it depends on the day, like when I got those messages, I would either delete them before I could even hear any of it because I just couldn't handle it, but actually towards the end, I was actually able to listen to them, and they kind of, I hate to say it, but they kind of made me laugh a little, because it's just like, oh yeah, there's my borderline mom who's still the way she is, and she's not changing anytime soon, and then, you know, and I would always, I mean, it would still bother me, of course, you know, a little bit, but not nearly as much. Man, my recovery time, I'm telling you, it's gotten so much better. So anyway, yeah. And at this point now, too, she only contacts me, like, or only attempts to contact me during, like, times when it's really about, like, her and stuff like that. So, and again, my dad's right there. He's available. He can always call me and leave me a message, and I'm more than happy to call back. You know, like, I've always kept it polite, always kept it kind with him and stuff like that. And he knows where I'm at. He knows where I stand, but, you know, he's married to her. So I can't imagine he's ever going to, you know, ever have, that relationship will never improve. I think it will always stay the way it is now, if not get worse. So anyway, yeah, so how can I share this whole story and not be, like, curled up and crawling in under my covers and, you know, stuff like that, and be emotional wreck? It's because I can honestly say the last 18 months, because it's now been basically 18 months since this whole thing happened, or started to happen, I can say without a doubt the last 18 months have been hands down the healthiest, best, freeing, positive, loving season of my life. Hands down. You know, when you cut your BPD mom out of your life because she really can't be in your life, there is this sense of safety, this sense of peace and security that I you know, that is just, it's everything that you have always wanted, and that's what I felt. I felt so much more. I've been able to move so much faster through my recovery because of it. I'm so much more confident in myself. Like, I just feel like me has come out. I really feel like I'm starting to inhabit myself, and that I am really being true to who I am and true to myself, and I'm comfortable in my skin now. You know, I'm so much more positive, so much happier. And don't get me wrong, I still every day hurt a little for my siblings. Like, every day there's still struggle, you know, with that. And I just love them from a distance and pray for them and just ask that God be in their lives, and that God would continue to take care of them, and that God would bless everyone in my family, you know. I'm not mad at my mom for how things have happened, you know, with me and my siblings, because I understand, like, this is just part of the whole thing, it's just how it goes, you know, with a BPD family. It's going to be messy. It's going to be a mess. That's my choice to make. And, anyway, I just can't, I mean, I really do feel like I'm finally in the place where I was meant to be, of like being able to be at peace, being able to really work on loving myself. And I love myself more now than ever, without a doubt, you know. I think that I'm now in finally a place where I can pursue being in an actual, like, really healthy relationship, and just all that stuff. Like, I can't even tell you, like, you know, it just, the freedom and the positivity and the love and the healthiness that I feel is amazing. And I do have to say that it took me also, for me personally, going no contact, and getting away from them for a little while, for me to finally really, really recover from my eating disorder too. So anyway, so for me, honestly, I can say, you know, it's just open. It's just, the world is, you know, my oyster at this point. Like, everything is just available to me. I can move forward in freedom and be able to become who I am and enjoy in my life moving forward. So anyway, so I hope this story helps, and please feel free to comment and share below your own thoughts and what you're doing with your own story. And if you have questions, please let me know too, because you can imagine there's a million things I did not share during this whole story. So yeah, so take care.